So let's quickly summarize what we covered in this module. Well, first we talked about the prerequisites that you would need to develop an iOS application. Basically, the three main things that you need is a Macintosh computer, you would need a simulator or hardware, an iPhone or an iPad to do your development on and to test against. And then third, you need Xcode, which is the IDE that you use to develop your iOS application. And optionally fourth, you might need some money. I covered a few ways that you could save some money by either getting a cheaper Macintosh or a used version and getting Xcode for just $5 from the App Store. Next, we talked about installing Xcode. I went through the very easy process of installing Xcode and showed you how to do that. It's really simple, and I just wanted to go through that so you could see it happening, especially if you haven't really used a Macintosh before. It can be a little bit confusing just knowing what to do to install a program, but we did that. We installed Xcode, and then we took a tour of Xcode. We looked at all the features that are in Xcode, and we really did a pretty comprehensive tour of the Xcode IDE. I'd encourage you to go back and watch this video again once you've been working in Xcode a little bit, and then it will kind of help you to see some of the features that you might be able to utilize more once you have a little bit of a basic understanding and have actually worked in Xcode. Next, we made our Hello World application, and that was also very simple. All we had to do was create a new project and then basically leave the default, and all we did was change the text on one of the views to say Hello World. And that's a really good place to start. I would encourage you to go ahead and create a brand new project like that and take a look at some of those files if you want to kind of get familiar with the structure of the Xcode project before we cover it in one of our future modules. And then finally, we examined the iOS simulator, and I showed you the features that the iOS simulator has, and we talked about some of the limitations. We also talked about the difference between a simulator and an emulator, and why that you might actually want to test on some real hardware and not just rely on the simulator. So that wraps up our module on setting up your development environment. You should now be set up and ready to go with your Xcode installed. And in our future module, we will actually use Xcode and start developing the application. In the next module, we're going to go through a basic overview of Objective-C so that we can have a little bit of understanding enough to be able to actually write some code and understand how to develop an iOS application.